Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, August the 30th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host and most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we do get started, guys, we are a news podcast which we try to be in the most reputable sense, which means the sources that we pull from are from reputable sources with award-winning journalism. We do not pull stuff like sensational news from Newsmax, The Blaze, or any other spot that makes you think with a tinfoil hat with a 401k plan that you need to invest in gold. You know what stations you are. Aside from that, guys, we do try to watch your language, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we usually start this? Because for the simple fact of the matter, guys, we've actually, let's just start off with the good news. I don't know if we can really call it good news. It's more like we saw this coming. It got dragged out. He finally got a mugshot. But what follows next really shouldn't be surprising.
Or in American history that has now become inescapable in virtually every corner of the world. The Georgia mugshot of former President Trump splashed across televisions and social media just minutes after its release. Trump and his 18 accused co-conspirators have now all been booked on charges connected to the alleged effort to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results. The Trump campaign wasting no time trying to cash in, selling his mugshot on T-shirts and coffee mugs. Some of his Republican rivals calling the frenzy a distraction. President Biden just responding tonight as well. Here's ABC's senior investigative reporter, Aaron Katersky.
Tonight, Donald Trump and all 18 of his co-defendants who allegedly formed what prosecutors call a criminal organization have turned themselves in, fingerprinted, photographed, assigned inmate numbers. Trump's mugshot rocketing around the world, the former president glowering into the camera. Today, President Biden chuckling, asked if he'd seen it.
I did see it on television.
Among the last to surrender in Georgia, former Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Clark. Prosecutors say he wanted to send an official letter falsely claiming the Justice Department had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states.
Did you discuss this draft letter to Georgia officials with the President of the United States?
Fifth and executive privilege again.
Trump calling the whole thing sad.
What has taken place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong.
But Trump's campaign started fundraising off his mugshot less than an hour after it was released. His Republican rivals now desperate to talk about anything else.
If the election ends up being about what happened in the past, if it ends up being about, personalities and other things like that, well, then Biden is going to be able to sit in his basement again, not have to justify his record.
It's a tremendous distraction from what the average person and the average household is facing. It was all good.
But Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis say if Trump's the nominee, they'll support him, even if he's convicted. Today, Scott was called out by a voter in New Hampshire.
You don't stand up to Trump. How are you going to stand up to the president of Russia and China?
The senator tried to push back, but that voter was unconvinced.
Trump's rivals unable to escape him out there on the trail. Aaron Katersky joins us now from Atlanta. And Aaron, there's this big day coming up in court on Monday. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows is asking the judge to transfer his case to federal court. Meadows is one of several defendants to make this request. So what can we expect in this first hearing?
Mary Meadows plans to argue that he was only doing his job as Trump's White House chief of staff. He believes he can get a better shake in federal court. The district attorney, Fani Willis, intends to call witnesses, including Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who, as you know, was the recipient of Trump's browbeating phone call in 2020. So this will be our first peek at some of the evidence she has amassed. Mary?
Aaron Katersky.
So what's really interesting
Wherever
about
you are,
this is what fact of the matter, guys. What's really interesting about all this is that Trump's mugshot, the mugshot seen around the world. And of course, because he believes he's done nothing wrong, his campaign is already out there doing the usual grift. Please donate. But think about that. Since that mugshot, $9 million sent to him. And I'm just thinking to myself, number one, who are these people that keep sending him money? I mean, I don't know what Trump has. I don't know what he has. It's what je ne sais quoi, whatever you want to call it. But for some odd reason, this man can convince people to give money to him and say, "Oh, it's a hoax, it's a sham." No, they gotta have. I mean, if it's a federal case, in this case, not a federal but a state's case, but at the same time, a state wouldn't bring up something unless they have very compelling evidence of that says otherwise. I didn't try to throw the election. You literally called them and said find votes. Again, anybody else would have been buried under the jail without no possibility of parole. But because it's Trump, it's fake news. It's fake news. It's fake news. And he's even now, even his former chief of staff, who I think is flipped, because if he does get his federal case, he has given up something. But as you can see, all his co-conspirators, including a priest, have all been arrested and fingerprinted. So the case that's going to happen is going to be very interesting. But at the same time, Trump can sit there and say all he wants to that he's innocent. However, the mountain ever growing, at this point, it might as well be a forest range of evidence against him, again, says otherwise. But, usually this times I try not to go over to the other side being the dark place. I like to call it Fox News. But I was curious. What would Fox News say in the event of literally their golden calf finally being put on the skewer? And I just wonder, because Fox News is supposed to be fair and balanced. I keep on saying that as a joke, because Fox News isn't a real news station. It's been proven in court. They are an entertainment network trying to prove that they're a news station and don't have one reputable journalist among them. Even their newest douchebag that replaced Tucker Carlson, Jesse Waters, tries his hardest to paint Trump in a light. Well, he tries to sit there and say that Trump may have found an ally in black men. You just can't make this shit up.
Founder of America First Legal and former senior advisor to Trump. And Kira Davis is host of the Just Listen to Yourself podcast. Kira, what do you think the impact of the mugshot is going to be?
Okay, Jesse, I gotta be totally honest with you. When I first saw the mugshot, and there were a lot of people who are like, yeah, this is badass. And I'm like, oh, I don't think black people are glorifying this. And then I thought, well, it is kind of badass. So I called a couple of black men I knew and asked them, and they basically said the same thing. And then I called my husband and I was like, what do you think about it? He was like, I think he looks defiant. And I realized, yeah, a lot of people are responding really well to this. And absolutely a lot of black men are like, this feels countercultural. We're always fighting the system, and here is the system coming for another person. I love that clip of the Martha Stewart comparison. So I know this is serious. This is a very serious thing that's happening to the former president. But I do think that it's resonating among some people, particularly black men. I'll tell you where it's not resonating: with black women. I went onto social media today and I just took the temperature of what was going on between men and women. And by far, the women were disgusted by Trump and cheering the mugshot. And the men were also cheering the mugshot, but they were saying, well, we're going to vote for him. So along those lines, they are split by gender in the black community, as far as I can tell. And we're in for an interesting ride.
Yeah, we sure are. That is interesting analysis. Stephen Miller, what was the first thing that you felt? Because this is all about emotion when you first laid your eyes on it.
Yes. Well, you're right. It is all about emotion. I'm going to get a little poetical with you tonight, if I may. They say that the eyes are the window into the human soul. That blazing set of eyes that we saw in that photograph revealed a soul that is
literally burning with a righteous flame on behalf of 300 million Americans. That is one of the most powerful images that I have ever seen. Yes, through the injustice, through the autocracy, through the crushing heel of the government, the oppression of the Democratic Party, one man and his two eyes looked straight into the hearts of the American people and said, I will not give up. I will not back down. I will not surrender. I will see this through no matter how it ends. They will not break me. That's what that photograph said. And those of us who have believed and who have hoped that there would be a real man, a true man someday who would vindicate our rights. We don't know how this battle ends, but we know that we will be riding in this battle, in this struggle to save democracy with a real man, Jesse.
The poet, Stephen Miller. I did not see that coming on a Friday night, but that was very, very powerful. So, Kira, explain to me why black women see this one way and black men see it the other.
Ooh, that's a rough question. I think that would take a lot more time to analyze than we have.
Do it in 30 seconds.
Look, I think a lot of it boils down to a lot of who thinks should be taking care of them. I think a lot of black women feel like the government should be taking care of them. And a lot of black men, this is why it's not that shocking when people like Ice Cube come out for guys like Trump. These guys have scraped their way out of the hood, out of poverty. They're capitalists, and that's what they appreciate. If anything comes from this, Jesse, I think this is what we need to come to when we look at the effect it's having in pop culture, particularly among black men. That where Republicans need to be going is the inner city to campaign, because people are interested in this message, and this mugshot and the whole Trump saga is speaking to them. So Republicans would be fools not to take advantage of this time and to go in and start messaging in those communities.
Real quick, Stephen, I'll give you maybe 20 seconds.
Well, on a lighter note, let me make this point. Have you ever tried to take a driver's license photo, a passport photo, any government photo? How the hell did Trump do this? I mean, those of us who've taken any government-issued ID in their entire lives have never had a photo that was even close to good, let alone our best moment. How does the man take the literal best photo of his life in a freaking booking shot in a Georgia Fulton County jail? This could be his single most impressive feat of all, Jesse.
Miller, I've already booked the Fulton County jail photographer to do my Christmas card. That's how good he is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I apologize. I mean, I was expecting a lot from Fox News. I really wasn't. I was expecting a lot from Jesse Waters. Like I said, he's the newest douchebag because Carlson got put out. And again, how they treated this jokingly. However, to a certain extent, Kira Davis is the one that worries me. Because Fox News does this, and I've said it all the time, and I say this to all who are black conservatives. Some of y'all are chasing the paycheck. Some of y'all truly believe that you're conservatives, and true believers, there's no convincing them otherwise. But a lot of y'all are for the check. I mean, Candace Owens, Jesse Peterson, the Confederate twins, that's just a handful of people who are all in it for the check. Don't believe in half the stuff they say, but they'll say stuff to make racist white folks feel comfortable, and those are the same people that give them money. What am I getting at here? That what has Fox News decided to do? Had to turn around and say, well, we brought on Stephen Myers, former advisor to Trump, and somehow not arrested yet. Somehow, out of everybody in his camp, that creepy douchebag has yet to be arrested. I say yet. Who paints Trump as the third coming of the Messiah, and trying to sit there and say, well, Mr. Trump, who tries to look menacing in every photo, may have gained the attention of black men. Speaking as a black man and a black man delegation, a mugshot has never fucking impressed us. I'm just saying. For all black men who have had brushing, who have had law enforcement stories, we'll all tell you a mugshot is not impressive, because literally we can do nothing and still get one just because they feel like it. Just saying. But at the same time, they're trying to stay, Kira Davis is, I guess, again, found somebody, and this is what Fox News does, find somebody to basically speak their rhetoric. And she did. Oh, black men love Trump, but black women are disgusted by him. oh, but black women just believe on stay on government assistance, believe the government will take care of them, while black men, they Trump understands what they've been through. And this is and what the icing on the cake of it all. The icing on the cake was the fact that she sat there and said conservatives are missing out on the black vote. If they would only go down to the ghetto, if they only go down to their neighborhoods and actually speak to them, they'd find out that a lot of black folks actually like conservatives. Okay, in the 3 years I've done this podcast, and I'm just going to be honest, in the 3 years I've done this podcast, I can say with almost absolute 100% certainty, conservatives do not like black people. Conservatives don't like women. Conservatives don't like minorities in general. Conservatives are basically old-aged white men. If you don't believe me, look what they've done. They've single-handedly got Roe versus Wade overturned. That goes against women. They eliminated affirmative action in colleges, which a lot of people don't believe it doesn't affect them, but it really does. It trickles down to companies. Again, affects minorities. But what have they done for white people? Managed to keep them out of almost anything detrimental without them being called terrorists. That's all I'm saying. And now with Trump's mugshot being out there and his court case being arranged, and now they're sitting there saying, well, he's defiant, he's this, he's that. No, Trump is a con man who off one mugshot alone has proven that some of America's people that have money are idiots, giving nearly $9 million in donations to keep this man flush because he'll need that money with all the lawsuits and court cases in and his army of lawyers. That $9 million may sound all nice, but that will evaporate come the billable hours. But it bothers me that again, they always try to say conservatives should lead to minorities. Conservatives never liked minorities, not in this day and age. And even more so, this also bothers me when I see shit like this.
I'm here to support President Trump. You want to know why I'm here to support President Trump? Because they done did black men like this for decades. Make up charges and put them, so I know Trump is innocent. I support Trump against this corrupt, two-tiered justice system. That's why I'm here to show my support as a black man for Trump. And I'm wearing my shirt, Niggas for Trump 2024, and I mean that.
What do you think about the indictments?
Oh, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's going around the country. Fannie Willis, she went to school with my sister. She's full of shit. She was full of shit then. So she's a puppet for the white liberal that is controlling everything. She's in front, but the white liberal back there pulling those strings, telling her what to do. That's what I think about her, making a fool of herself.
Do you think it's going to help his election?
Of course it is. It's going to elevate him on the way. I think we should make Trump king. That's how I feel. We should make him king.
Wouldn't that be kind of like communistic?
No, that's nowhere near communist. Now, we're just going to make him king, but we still got our freedoms and rights and everything. He for that. Yeah, Trump for king 2024.
That's actually my URL. I own that URL.
You own that URL?
I can't get your name.
Really? Oh, my name is Niggas for Trump 2024.
I can't
Derek
write that.
Gibson,
That's my nigga.
Former candidate. I'm a former candidate for New York State Governor. Derek Gibson, look me up. Nigga, I'm there. I live up to it too, boy. I can scrap too, but I can get down, boy. Not better, I can. I got a proven track record. Oh, you want to try me out? Try to take this shirt off. I'll give you some. Need everybody off the roadway, sir.
Let me say something real quick. I'm just letting that just hang up there because that shit's not cute. That shit's not cute. That's not intelligent. That's not attention grabbing. That's not any of the above. If anything, that's a damn shame. Because how? In the entire frack, are you as a black man going to sit there and wear a shirt like that? And even more so, feel like you're completely okay to say that. Even more so that he goes, oh, well, and again, spouting everything that's been said from the conservative crazy side. And then at the same time saying, oh, well, niggas for Trump 2024. I have never wanted so bad to literally beat. I mean, I tried not to, but it's like Chris Rock said it best. There's black people, there's them. And they don't represent us. But again, conservative media will eat them up. They'll sit there and say, and don't get me wrong, there may actually be some black men for Trump. I don't know why. Black men, I don't know. That's the one thing I will never understand. Trump has done nothing for minorities, women, and people of color since his terms in office. Has done, oh, but Will, he sat there and gave $100 million to HBCUs. It was never collected. Oh, well, he released one person from jail. Every president does that. Oh, but he got Mexico to pay for the wall. No, he did. We paid for it. It's amazing that if you really think about it, the level of people that believe in Trump actually doing something amazes me. But you might actually find some black folks that might be for Trump. I would hope not of that man's level, because it's amazing how quickly he didn't give his name. And that's one thing. When you put something on the internet, it doesn't come down. I'm curious to see whatever happens to that guy since he put out that video. Hopefully that shirt will keep him warm, because that might be the last thing he has. But that being said, moving on to the debate. I called it last week. The debate they did have last week, I tried to tell you how much of a crap show it was going to be. Even call what they're going to talk about. But what's shocking, and I just want you to listen to this because a couple of minutes, there's going to be a certain question that comes up, and all of them are going to answer. And this is why I say I'm concerned.
Works on center stage at the first Republican debate, with frontrunner Donald Trump refusing to attend, citing his lead in the polls. The night revolved around the next two highest polling candidates, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
We will send Joe Biden back to his basement, and we will reverse the decline of this country.
And entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy.
The only war that I will declare as U.S. president will be the war on the federal administrative state.
The polarizing political newcomer trading barbs with nearly every other candidate, who pointed out his lack of experience.
Now is not the time for on-the-job training.
Now that everybody's gotten their memorized, pre-prepared slogans out of the way, we can actually have a real discussion now.
And his combative style.
I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax.
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here.
Some of the night's most substantive discussion on the issue of abortion and whether candidates would support a federal ban.
I promise you, as President of the United States, the American people will have a champion for life in the Oval Office.
Don't make women feel like they have to decide on this issue when you know we don't have 60 Senate votes.
Despite his glaring absence in the room, Mr. Trump's presence still felt. Asked if they'd support him as the GOP nominee, even if he were convicted. Eventually, 6 candidates, including DeSantis, saying yes, as the crowd reacted. Though some still seized on his legal and political baggage.
The conduct is beneath the office of President of the United States.
Former Vice President Mike Pence using the debate to once again defend his actions on January 6th.
He asked me to put him over the Constitution, and I chose the Constitution.
Would you have approached that question and that point any differently on the stage tonight if Donald Trump had been on it with you?
I don't believe I would, and I think it was a missed opportunity for him not to be there. My bet is he might be at the next one.
The former president's advisors say the focus on him and on his policies and on the chaotic nature of the debate generally vindicated his decision not to show up, and point to the millions of online viewers for his other interview. The question now is what, if anything, could compel the former president to show up at the next debate next month? Craig?
All right. And you know what? To a certain extent, that comment is right. I mean, that debate right there had 8 candidates. 8 candidates could have sat there and really put themselves out from the pack. They could have sat there and, decided to be away from Trump, could have actually sat there and did something and said, you know what, this is the reason why you should consider me for the Republican nominee. And they all did the same thing. However, they always the whole thing. Oh well, you're not going to talk about Trump, but you are. You're not going to talk about. You're going to talk about Biden being old and decrepit. You are. You're going to sit there and say the economy's in the tank because the Democrats are overspending. We knew that was coming. And then you had somebody like Vivek come up there and say that I'm going to say the one thing that everybody should be saying, that the climate change is a hoax. And the scary part, and I should say this is the scary part. It is scary because, again, all 8 candidates were all asked the same question. If Donald Trump was nominated, would you vote for him? Every one of them raised their hand. By my definition alone, none of you qualify at that point. The fact that you had Chris Christie, who raised his hand and sat there and said that his conduct was unbecoming of a president, but you would vote for him again. Mike Pence, who sat there and still catches hell for actually doing the right thing as vice president and holding up the electoral count January 6th, would vote for him again. Tim Scott, which we'll get into another one, would vote for him. I still find it funny that a black man that's running on a Republican ballot thinks he's going to get a vote. He's right there with Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, who again said a lot of great things about spending and said curtail, would still vote for Trump again. This is the point. This is the part that I'm getting to, guys, is that Trump was actually vindicated by them. By them. They could have sat there at any given time and stood out, chose not to, but yet proved him right. He went on to douchebag Tucker Carlson's thing on Twitter to cry about the fact that he's being vindicated, he's being brought through the mud, woe is me, Tucker Carlson giving him softball questions, and things of that nature, trying to, again, currying the former failure-in-chief's favor. But at the same time, if he's not in handcuffs, he could be the Republican nominee because you have 8 candidates that have yet to prove why they shouldn't do anything because they're too busy swearing allegiance to Trump. Even Tim Scott, who got handed out by an older gentleman, sat there and said, if you won't even stand up to Trump, what are you going to do against Putin and China? And it's just like, damn. I mean, damn, Tim Scott, even 2% milk is blacker than you, but damn. But again, that's Tim Scott. He has no answer, especially for his plan that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But again, the next debate's supposed to be coming up. I can only imagine, for part of my French, still going to be a shit show. But speaking of shit shows, this one actually has a nicer ending. You remember the case of the two women that were working as election voters who literally got outed by Trump, who had to change names, addresses, things of that nature because out of fear for their lives. And Rudy Giuliani, former America's mayor, former lawyer for Trump, was one of the main ones outing them, saying they did this, they threw the election, come to find out that it was a lie, and they turned around and sued Rudy Giuliani. Yeah, turns out Giuliani lost twice in court. That's getting him both times in the wallet. But I think this one's pretty freaking sweet.
News here, a judge has ruled against Rudy Giuliani in a defamation case brought by Georgia poll workers Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman. There will be another trial date to determine the amount of damages that Giuliani will have to pay, but he's already been ordered to pay $90,000 in attorney's fees for Moss and Freeman. But the fact that Giuliani lost this defamation lawsuit isn't exactly surprising. He actually conceded in court that he, quote, does not contest that the assertions he made about Freeman and Moss orchestrating some scheme to manipulate the vote count in Georgia, quote, were false. His court filing went on to say, defendant Giuliani concedes solely for the purposes of this litigation that defendant Giuliani made the statements of and concerning plaintiffs. He does not dispute for the purposes of this litigation that the statements carry meaning that is defamatory per se. In other words, he admitted to defamation in a defamation case. So of course he's forfeiting this case, what with there quite literally being no defense. But that raises the question, why? What's Giuliani's strategy here? One theory is that he was trying to avoid discovery in this case. He was afraid of what he was going to be forced to disclose in discovery, and so by conceding that he defamed the women, that put a stop to discovery, and the question just becomes one of damages. So if you're wondering whether Giuliani has something to hide, I think the answer has now become obvious. And Judge Howell agreed, writing, perhaps he has made the calculation that his overall litigation risks are minimized by not complying with the discovery obligations in this case. Whatever the reason, obligations are case-specific, and withholding required discovery in this case has consequences. Yet, just as taking shortcuts to win an election carries risks, even potential criminal liability, bypassing the discovery process carries serious sanctions, no matter what the reservations a non-compliant party may try to artificially preserve for appeal. Meaning that Giuliani might have tried to protect himself in this case and other ongoing criminal cases by limiting discovery, but that didn't come without consequences, as he'll now be hit with sanctions commensurate with his actions. Judge Howell continued with this blow, writing, donning a cloak of victimization may play well on a public stage to certain audiences, but in a court of law, this performance has served only to subvert the normal process of discovery in a straightforward defamation case, which I presume is judge speak for your bullshit isn't going to work in here.
And yeah, pretty much. But no, those two women, like I said before, former election workers who literally got put through the mud. I mean, think about it. You had to leave your home, you had to change your name because they had death threats. They had people that were literally trying to take their lives. And imagine living in that prison of fear and not lose your sanity. But yes, Rudy Giuliani did lose that case, and I hope those two women take everything, and I do mean everything, from that man, except his hair dye, because Lord knows he needs it, even though he looks like he was melting when he took the mugshot picture. But again, it just goes to show you that, I mean, there is some justice in that. Now, do I believe that, being compensated well? I hope they aren't compensated very well. I hope that, Giuliani is feeling it, because, again, the best way you can hurt these people is always in the wallet, the bottom line, the bank account. When that bank account goes zero in the negative direction, that's how you can hurt them. And hopefully that will be the case for them. That we shall see the next court case. But as we're shifting gears for a little bit, guys, I want to talk about this because we brought this up on How the Frack Got Here podcast for you about a year now. It comes up now. Drug prices, because there are now going to be 10 drugs that are going to be now available for negotiations. The only people that hate this are conservatives and drug corporations. I have said many a times before I start this video, that the U.S. is a closed drug market, that the reason why drug costs are so high is because insurance companies and drug pharmaceutical companies have lobbied Congress to make sure that they are not in competition with overseas or international markets. That's the truth. That's why you can't go get prescriptions from Canada or Mexico or even across the pond. Why? Because certain companies and healthcare companies and drug care companies hate competition. That being said, because of the law that they pushed through the Inflation Act by the Democrats, 10 actual drugs are now going to be available for negotiations, and you can pretty much imagine how that's going to go.
Today that may impact anyone who gets prescription drugs through Medicare. The White House revealing the first 10 medications that under a new law will be subject to deep price cut negotiations with drug companies. Tom Costello explains.
The 10 meds are among the most widely prescribed for those on Medicare. As drug company profits have surged, seniors are now averaging $6,500 out-of-pocket expenses and more, forcing many to choose between their meds or groceries. Retired teacher Robin Gilden has already spent $4,500 this year on 8 prescriptions, including Jardiance for diabetes.
I have to get these drugs. I have to get them to stay healthy. I just close my eyes and I pick them up.
Jardiance on the list for price cut negotiations, along with Januvia, Theosp, and Novolog for diabetes, Eliquis and Xarelto, both blood thinners, Enbrel for arthritis, Imbruvica for blood cancer, Farxiga for diabetes, heart failure, and kidney disease, and Tresto for heart failure, Stelara for psoriasis and Crohn's disease.
Today is the start of a new deal for patients, where Big Pharma doesn't just get a blank check.
In 2003, the Republican Congress banned Medicare from negotiating lower drug prices. The new law empowers Medicare to do just that, negotiate. If drug companies don't participate, they face tax penalties. The pharma industry is suing to block the law, claiming it'll mean less money for new drugs, and politics should not dictate which treatments and cures are worth developing and who should get access to them. But after capping insulin at $35, polls show broad support for more price caps.
This is fundamentally about putting prescriptions back in the reach of people by making them more affordable.
Pending legal challenges, the new prices on these 10 meds should take effect in 2026, then more drug price cuts in 27, 28, 6.
So yes, in 2028, 26, they are having drug price cuts. I'm saying, again, it is amazing to me that the only people that are having problems with this are drug companies, health insurance companies. My big thing has always been this. How in the world do you have life-saving medication? You can have life-saving medication, blood thinners, diabetes, insulin for diabetes, blood thinner if you have high blood pressure, Enbrel, which handles rheumatoid arthritis, and also other things like Imbruvica for blood cancers, things of that nature. How is it that these are also, never forget, inhalers if you have asthma. The point I'm making is all of these things are life-saving medications. You would think right off the bat, without this, you'd probably die. Why are those prices so high? That's the question I always ask. If it's life-saving medication, it should be covered. I've always said this when it comes to health insurance companies. If it's life-saving medication, you need to have this in order to survive, it should be covered. Why is it always a fight? And why do prices always go up? And again, this is why I stand and say for what they're doing is great. I wish their impact was sooner, because you got to think the nearest anybody's going to feel for this is literally going to be it's going to be 3 years from now, and then 2 years after that, and 2 years after that. As great as it is, the impact honestly needs to be yesterday. At the same time, I am not surprised that those that are of the lobbying type conservatives sit there and say, well, we just, this is us saying that we don't want the government doing negotiating prices. Seems to work for every other country that has a unified payer system in which government controls the prices there. But I don't see anybody in Germany or Switzerland or Finland complaining, or New Zealand for that matter. All countries that have a unified payer system. Whereas in the U.S., for us to be such a progressive country, our healthcare is shit. So again, I find it hard to believe that folks want to argue about the price of insulin. I say it's easy to argue about the price of insulin for diabetes when you don't need it, or inhalers when you don't have asthma, or for medications if you have heart disease, kidney disease, chronic failure, chronic lung failure. It is amazing to not argue those things because you don't need them. But imagine that if it came down between you needing your medication and paying rent, or your mortgage, or your car note, or utilities. You got to decide, because it wasn't too long ago, guys, when we had an insulin problem that people were rationing, which is one thing that insulin people should never do, is ration their insulin, because there's a chance that you might miss it and you could have a spike or a drop, and it could lead to death. But those folks are saying, well, my insulin may cost me $400 or $500. At the same time, what can they do in that situation? Let's not also forget the voting aspect. There's going to be a lot of people that are on Medicare and Medicaid that depends on those price cuts in order to get their medications. They're also voters. I point this out all the time. Those that vote for conservatives that are on Medicare and Medicaid always cut their own interest out from under them, because they'll be elected. Your prices on your medications go up. You can't afford them. Who are you going to blame? Obviously yourself. Because sure, you can blame conservatives, but they can only do what they're paid to do. If you vote to get them there, then the fault is on you as well. But again, I digress. Just wish that the price would come sooner. But at the same time, I really wish we could do more with our healthcare system, because it does need to go to a single payer system, because we've seen that it works. Just saying. But moving right along, guys, I wanted to cover this as well, because Biden may not get everything right. There are some things that I disagree with him on. He may not get everything right, but he's done enough to basically cause this, that McCarthy is planning to start an Biden impeachment strategy. Kevin McCarthy, the man that took 15 times to be nominated Speaker of the House for his Republican group, the same guy who 5 Republicans would not vote in, the same guy who had to make a deal in order to kick the can down the road to avoid a government shutdown. He is now beginning to strategize how to impeach Joe Biden. You know, this is why I sit there and say the entire time about those that kept on saying, "Well, I voted for Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans because I want them to impeach." Crazy ass Marjorie Taylor Greene has been trying to impeach Joe Biden only because he's done nothing wrong, but he has shone a light where the cockroaches are. And it's amazing to me that now McCarthy, because he's trying to bend to the will of those like Matt Gaetz and Laura Boebert and those other crazy people on the Hill, he's trying to basically bend to their will and say, well, we need to impeach Biden. Here's the problem. Even if he moved forward, he doesn't have the 218 votes to do it. So imagine that you're trying to launch an inquiry into an impeachment, but everybody's looking at you like, not to sound like Hamilton, you don't have the votes. You don't have the votes. I'm sorry, my voice kind of went on that one, but it's still true. Even in the House, they don't have the 218 votes to actually move forward with an impeachment. They can talk about it all they want to, but they don't have a path forward. Even more so, this goes to show you, like I said, Republicans have been in office. They've been in office since the beginning of the year. What have they done? And I ask conservatives this all the time. You may not like Democrats because of all the things they try to push through, but ask yourself one question. What have Republicans done since they've taken office that has actually benefited the American people? I guarantee you will find none. They've helped repeal things. They've helped push things through, but they have done nothing to help the American people except inquiries into useless people and even overstepping some bounds. I'm talking about Jim Jordan trying to go after the Georgia DA prosecutor, realizing that I want to launch an inquiry into her because she's after Trump. Newsflash, genius, you don't have the ability to do it, which again is a felony. But speaking of things that are idiotic and things of that nature, Tim Scott, let me get to that, Uncle Tom. Again, the second black man in an all nearly white party that is now the Conservative Party. Again, running for president because God only knows why. Good luck trying to get votes. A black man running on the Conservative Party ticket, trying to get votes. Good luck. That being said, guys, I want to cover this because Mr. Tim Scott himself has decided that he is unrolling his 12-point plan. A 12-point plan that he calls that will go after teachers, unions, big tech, and Joe Biden. His plan, it says, outlines proposals to give parents more control of their children's education, reduce the impact of social media and large technology companies on children, and create a family-first culture by reducing accommodations for transgender people and protecting crisis pregnancy centers that provide information about adoption to pregnant mothers in an effort to reduce abortions. He will also go after teachers' unions and enact school choice, allowing parents to use public school funds to pay for their children to be educated in private schools, charter schools, or to be homeschooled. Yes, you heard the last part. Public funds to pay for kids to go to private schools, charter schools, or be homeschooled. He also pledges to replace indoctrination with education and ban critical race theory from school curricula while giving every family the right to opt out of propaganda that attacks their values and religious liberties. I mean, if that ain't the biggest crock of shit. I mean, let's just start with the beginning. This is already, it's amazing. His plan is everything that's already happened up until this point in 2023. Because, guys, you got to remember, February, March, they talked, parents started getting enacted. We don't like what our children are being taught. You're teaching critical race theory for the almost 2.5 billionth time. There is not a school out there outside of a law school that is teaching CRT. I mean, I don't know how else I can say that. CRT is not being taught anywhere. There's no emphasis on it. There's nothing leading to it. It's not it's not being taught. It is a lawyer class. So unless your child is highly intelligently gifted and has somehow breezed through grade school and found themselves in a law school, would be the only place they would hear it. But if you ask conservatives, CRT is being taught everywhere because they label CRT with the fact that CRT makes white people feel bad about their ancestors. It does. I mean, here's the thing. If you learn about history, you are not doomed to repeat it. I say it all the time at the end of my show. Those who learn from history those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We shouldn't be surprised that folks, and again, it's been said before, most folks who grew up during racist times don't want their grandchildren to find out that they were racist. And Tim Scott being a black man, I still find it funny because he tries to do all the checks and balances. I grew up poor. I grew up in a family in a one shack room where you had to go outside and use the bathroom. I had to scrape my way to get to where I am, and I'm very proud of it. I didn't get a handout. I pulled myself up from my bootstraps, and that's how I became a senator, by kissing a conservative's ass. That's how you became a senator. That's really what it is. But his whole proposal, I mean, let's forget the fact he wants to ban CRT. That's the other part you should be worried about, that he wants to use public funds to give parents school choice. Let me tell you what's wrong with school choice. And I say this all the time. And me coming from a conservative state such as Tennessee, which is another story I'll get to momentarily. But they try to do school choice here. And a lot of people don't understand. It sounds all great. Oh, you can send your child to any school that you think will be best for them. But what if it's a charter school? No problem. What if it's a private school? No problem. We'll give you school vouchers so you'll be able to do it. What a lot of people didn't ask was, where was that funding coming from? That funding came from public school. That funding came from funding for public schools. That's been the problem. Now, if they found some other way or pulled money from some other thing that was useless and was basically getting paid for nothing, go for it. But the fact they pulled public funding for public schools and try to sit there and say, they're trying to use the excuse of, parents just want to have choice. No, parents do want to have choice, but we don't want to take from public schools, which have been serving kids who don't have the same opportunities as others, because everybody has the right to a basic education. Everybody has the right to actually learn and read and write and all those things. But what Tim Scott is saying is the other part of it is, they can be educated. Private schools, charter schools will be homeschooled. Time out. Why the frack do you need public funds for homeschool? I mean, how is anybody not scratching their heads and going, time out? Why do they need public funding? Or private schools. Private schools mean tuition. Trust me. If you're taking your child to a private school, if your child's going to a private school, 9 times out of 10, you are paying tuition and you're not happy about it. Charter schools, maybe tuition there. Preparation or preparatory schools, probably the same. But homeschool gets public school funding. That doesn't make any sense. But then again, it's Tim Scott. And then the other part of it, before I get to that, he wants to break the back of the teachers' unions. Anybody that's a union buster should be red flagged immediately, because you know why he's there. He is not there to help. He is there to basically break up something. Because when you see union busters like Amazon, things of that nature, they are there to break up things because they know the status quo will change, and then in the end, it'll cost them money. Tim Scott believes that, if we make education bad enough, and it's not just him, it's the entire GOP. If the entire GOP believes that in order to basically privatize something, you have to make it so bad that privatization is the only option to bail it out. They tried that with the post office and failed. At the same time, which again, I'm not sure how the joy for the Postmaster General is still in office, but that's a whole other story. But that's what he wants with his education. By pretty much telling teachers who are educated, who are accredited, who have jumped through all these hoops to be able to have the honor and pleasure of teaching your kids, this man is going to stand and say, no, I don't like the fact, I want to give parents the ability for their kids to learn and have them opt out of propaganda that attacks their values and religious liberties, i.e. slavery, or anything dealing with the fact that, those dark spots in America's history that they don't want their kids to learn about, they'll sit there and say that's attacking their religious liberties, which is kind of bullshit. And then the whole thing which kills me is replace indoctrination with education. I'm just going to sit there and say, if you want indoctrination, go to religious schools. Plenty of it there. I'm going to leave it at that. But his whole plan is literally bullshit. And at the same time, there are folks actually eat this mess up. But this goes to show you, like I said before, when you're not sure of who to vote for, and like I said, I highly, highly encourage people to vote. I highly encourage people to vote. But figure out what these candidates are, because you'll be surprised about half the mess they pull, even more so about what they're trying to push through. And none of it is beneficial to you. But again, check out the candidates, be active, be voting. And if you don't like the candidates, you could always feel free to run. But I do want to cover the story from Jacksonville, guys, because again, another story, and I cannot make this up, that you're going to hear one word out of all, you're going to hear two words that I keep waiting for, because it hits all the checks and balances when it's a mass shooting and it involves black people and a racist white man. And I only heard the words hate crime once.
Rampage at a store in Florida. A security guard from a nearby college campus is being hailed as a hero tonight for potentially preventing even more deaths. He spoke with our Gabe Gutierrez.
Before the gunman, seen here on surveillance video, walked into a Dollar General store in Jacksonville Saturday and killed 3 people. Tonight, police releasing new images of the moment he stopped in the parking lot of nearby Edward Waters University. And that's when a group of students flagged down a campus security officer.
I don't consider myself a hero.
Lieutenant Antonio Bailey quickly confronted the gunman, later identified as 21-year-old Ryan Christopher Palmeter.
He had on what appeared to be a tactical vest up under a shirt and mask.
Did you ever, in your mind, consider not confronting the suspect?
No, I did not. This is what we signed up for.
The gunman sped away and later opened fire at the Dollar General nearby before taking his own life. While the local sheriff says it's not clear that the gunman planned to target the university, the school's president has no doubt why he went there first.
Do you believe that if he had not confronted the suspect, do you believe that this attack would have been unfolded here on this campus?
I absolutely do.
Tonight, the FBI is investigating the shooting as a hate crime. The sheriff here says the gunman had written down racist rants. The victims identified as Gerald Deshaun Gallion, A.J. Laguerre Jr., and Angela Carr.
This is so unreal. Oh, God.
Carr's daughter, Ashley, says her mom was an Uber driver who leaves behind 3 kids and 16 grandchildren.
She's touched the lives of hundreds, if not thousands.
Today, President Biden meeting with civil rights leaders commemorating the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington.
White supremacy is a poison.
Police say the gunman legally purchased the AR-15 style rifle and handgun he used, and that he had no criminal record. Though as a teenager, he was held for an involuntary mental health evaluation.
What he did is totally unacceptable in the state of Florida.
At a prayer vigil, Governor Ron DeSantis faced boos from the crowd after previously drawing backlash over efforts to change Black history teaching standards in Florida's public schools.
Today, the governor announced the state would set aside $1 million to beef up security at Edward Waters University.
So I ask a question: Who the hell invited him? I mean, you would think for dictator Governor Ron DeSantis, for a man that sat there and looked at African American AP history and said, "I don't like the way it looks," forced the entire state to change it. You are now going to show up at a vigil where 3 Black people were killed by a racist white man and try to give your condolences and wonder why you got booed? I can tell you why you got booed. Nobody wanted you there. But again, getting back to the gunman, as he said, the gun was purchased legally. At the same time, this is why I tend to say that there's some laws that need to be done. Now, again, the laws I keep on saying is mental health evaluations. For example, if you were placed on a mental health evaluation or a 5150 hold or things of that nature, and when a gun, and again, this is where I say where red flag or mental health checks are being done, should be in accordance with universal background checks. Because if something pulled up in your history to where it's like, wait a minute, you've been this. Can you explain, you've been held in a mental health hospital. Now we got to put you on an evaluation first before we can release this gun to you. But at the same time, the man had manifestos of his hatred for black people. Going to an all-black college and realizing that he was not going to get away with it, decides to basically go to a Dollar General store because, let's be honest, Dollar General stores don't have a lot of security, and figured that was his best advantage. And I am glad that it is being investigated as a hate crime, but it should not take the FBI at this point. It should have been Florida police. Really and truly should have been Florida police that turns around and sits there and says, yes, we are going to investigate this as a hate crime. Because I'm not trying to be that guy, but when the coronavirus thing was big and Trump had insinuated that the coronavirus came from China and Chinese people were being assaulted everywhere, I'm just saying that hate bill was done in record time. At the same time, how long did it take us to get lynching to be marked as a federal hate crime? Lynching. It took longer for lynching to be labeled as a federal hate crime than it was to get an Asian America COVID-19 anti-hate bill put in. I'm just saying there's a difference. But like I said, I'm getting back to Tennessee for a second, guys, because again, my home state is progressively backwards, not because of endless bachelorette parties downtown. I mean, that's a thing now. But our legislation. Meanwhile, House Speaker Sexton has decided that, well, he's going to act like Governor DeSantis in a way, but he only does it toward black folks, which tells me he's a bit racist.
Spotlight again. Protests erupted outside the Tennessee House floor yesterday after Republicans banned a Democratic lawmaker from speaking or debating during a special session. Representative Justin Jones was accused of violating new rules put in place to punish lawmakers who are deemed disruptive on the House floor. Now, the special session was called to address the deadly elementary school shooting in Nashville back in March. Jones began criticizing a bill that would add more police to schools. He was then warned not to stray off topic before a vote was held to silence Jones for the rest of the day. In response, Democrats walked off the floor. Jones had this to say outside the chambers.
Our Democratic caucus was united. We walked out because that's a charade, a sham happening there, and the people are united, challenging authoritarianism. The people in the galleries were taken out. The Democratic members walked out. So all in there now is just a facade of democracy and of the legislative process.
Justin Jones' name sounds familiar. That's because he was one of two lawmen.
Yeah, he was one of two lawmen that were actually outed out because they decided to challenge the status quo. And even then, he tried to challenge the status quo. But you know why he challenged the status quo? Because he asked for a vote of no confidence for Speaker Sexton. He asked, what is the process for a vote of no confidence in the House Speaker, Cameron Sexton? And Cameron Sexton ignored him. Even to the point where he's like, okay, I still want to bring this up. What is the point of operations for introducing a vote of no confidence? In which that's the reason why he was silenced. But it is amazing to me that this is a new rule that the overwhelmingly GOP House that we have here, unfortunately, says that members can be silenced anywhere from a day to the rest of the year for not sticking to the bill that is currently being debated. That's the reason why the Democrats left, the reason why Jones had left, and even the reason why Cameron Sexton weaponized the Tennessee State Highway Patrolman to remove those in the galley, because now he's trying to say you can't have signs. Yes, you can. He got struck down. But this goes to show you really how bad our legislation is in Tennessee. And it's not just Tennessee, it's the South. Go anywhere in the South. Go to Tennessee, go to Kentucky, go to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas. Anywhere in the South, our House chambers, our legislation looks exactly like that. and I keep on saying this, guys, all the freaking time. In order to change things, you have to vote locally as well as federally. If you don't like the people that are the choice that you have, run yourself. That's what people did. A lot of people are actually running for office. Ain't nothing wrong with that. If you believe you can change the world, go for it. But this is what we're dealing with right now. And again, I keep saying this. And if not 5 years, 10 years time, America's going to look very different because it's going to be more POC than anything else. That scares some napkin Americans. It does. It scares napkin Americans. They literally, it's like being on top of the food chain for so long and then realizing you're being put to the back end of the line. It's scary for those that do not embrace change. That is all I'm saying. But speaking of people that don't embrace change, the Amazon CEO tells employees to return to the office or their days will be numbered. That distinguished, unbridled, highly contemplated gentleman is Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, who sat there and says that yes, Amazon does have a return to work date after being virtual for so many months, and now telling his employees in the email that yes, it is now time to return back to work, in which a lot of Amazon employees are fighting against. Now, if you're like me, I work from home. I've been working from home for almost 2 years now. As I said before, I'm domesticated. I don't know if I can go back in an office. I don't know if I can even go back to commuting, getting up, getting in the car, fighting traffic just to get to the workplace, just to sit there and stare at some walls for 8 hours, then turn around, get back into the car, drive back home, fighting traffic possibly, maybe having to go into the grocery store, getting something to eat, and then finally going home and resting. When, being remote, you wake up, you can get breakfast in your own house, you can go to your office, you can sit down, or you can go wherever you got your stuff at, sit down and work and be relaxed. A lot of people like myself have found that out. Working from home is freaking relaxing because you know why? You can relax in your place. There's nobody around here. Dress code is, well, questionable, but hey, as long as nobody's seeing you naked, that's the big thing. But people have de-stress working from home. They love being around their kids or loved ones at home. They've been able to make certain errands that used to be a little bit of a challenge, now a little bit easier because you're at home. And you have pendejos like this that are going to sit there and say, "Oh, well, we have a return to work date, and if you don't come back, and if you don't report back, you may not have a job." In my opinion, these are people, and I say this all the time. These are individuals that have, corporations, but individuals. These corporations have bought out buildings. I can tell you off the bat, the company I used to work for did the same thing. They bought out buildings, and then when the coronavirus hit, they turned around and said, "Okay, everybody's got to work remotely from home, except certain help desk support, i.e., yours truly included." So as we're getting people home, it's like we're sitting. And I said, this is, again, a short story. As people got to work from home, managers first, because priorities, I guess. The last group of people, those working help desk, still had to come in the office to service empty buildings. Nobody else was in those buildings but us and security. But everybody else working from home. Until it finally got to the point where it's like, okay, you guys can work from home too because there's no reason for y'all to be there. Being told from management who's working from home. Now, again, for most companies, they've learned to adapt. They've sat there and said, well, we don't really need a building. Everything can be done from home. We can work via the internet. We can work via the cloud. We don't need a building. Let it go. Save some money on the back end for us. Some companies have adapted to a remote-only environment, while some companies, i.e. Amazon, have sat there and said, no, we want you back in the office. It's not even productive reasons. I have sat there and said this, and I've yet to get a contradiction to this. If your job can be done from home, what's the whole point of coming into an office? I mean, let's be honest. It's people, 9 times out of 10, if you're like me, people you don't want to see. I'm not a morning person anyway, so I'm, keep silent to myself till the caffeine kicks in. You're staring at a wall. You're just trying to keep sane. But again, your work can be done from home just as easy. There's nothing that has to be done in the office that you can't do from home, unless you're working in a specialized area, I guess, or working on equipment that just can't be sent from home. That's the only thing I can think of. But for Amazon to sit there and push this forward, I see another strike coming in their future, and I'm just not surprised about it. But speaking of things I'm not surprised about, Biden administration always impresses me sometimes when you think they're going to do something, but then they turn around and then just surprise you about the direction they go. Because the reason why, we know there's a housing crisis. We just talked about last week that mortgage rates is high, rent is extremely high, getting a home is damn near impossible. So the Biden administration has decided to do something about that. I know you'll understand why I had that look momentarily.
Is set to announce his administration's new plan to tackle so-called junk fees related to certain housing rentals. The White House is taking aim at fees on popular websites like Zillow and Apartments.com. ABC News White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks joins me now with more on that. So, Mary Alice, what's the plan here? What rental groups is the president working with, and what are these fees that he's targeting?
Yeah, Dan, this is really interesting. It's a part of the president's announcement today. He's going to hold an event here at the White House in just a little bit. He has 3 big companies who he says are willing to play ball and that he's working with. You mentioned 2 of them there, Zillow, Apartments.com, and also AffordableHousing.com. The White House is saying that all 3 of these websites are going to change how they present rental fees and rental costs to consumers, to shoppers on their websites. That they're going to now develop tools where renters, potential renters, can see the whole cost, can see things like security deposits or hidden fees that might be required, as well as sort of the total rental cost. The White House admitting that they're not necessarily getting fees to go away or reducing costs, but they think that this level of transparency will really help families. In the last few years, we've seen the rental market just ebb and flow. During COVID, some rental prices really went down, but those sort of decreases have really been made up for. Now we're seeing rental prices skyrocket again. On average, across the country, American families that are renting are still paying about 1/3 of their gross income on rent. And in big cities, we know, like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, that number can be as much as 50% or even more. The White House knows that they really need to help renters right now who are struggling with housing costs.
So, Mary Alice, you're saying this won't necessarily get rid of the fees. So how will this help renters?
I think that it's going to provide a level of transparency. We know that AffordableHousing.com is going to, for example, have a badge listed where owners that have in the past tried to really limit fees and tried to limit costs are going to be sort of starred as trusted owners that'll help buyers sort of look out for those good owners and really help people make their own budgets. That's what the administration has been trying to do with all of these plans. They've been looking at things like fees for movie concerts, things for airline tickets, healthcare plans. They want people to feel like they're in control of their own family budgets, that they aren't surprised later, that there isn't sticker shock later. They know what they're signing up for. And the White House is saying that every little bit counts. If they can help families avoid 1 or 2 little fees, it can just be that little buffer at the end of the month that really helps a family.
All right, Mary Alice Parks.
Wherever you are, hunker.
All I can say, like I said before, like I said, guys, it is amazing to me that what they believe is going to work, when you say it out loud, it equals up to nothing. Well, we want to go after junk fees. Cool. So you're going to go after application fees, credit check fees, or you're going after all those things when you're applying for an apartment or you're going for a house. You're telling me that you're going to take out those fees? Well, no, we're not going for that. We're going after, your Zillows, your Airbnbs. We're going to try to take out those junk fees. I mean, if you're going to be honest here, if you ever did an apartment, I mean, it's crazy because most apartments these days will, you're charged off the bat for an application fee. That means they got to pay somebody who's already on their payroll to go over your application, process it, and then see whether or not that they will approve you. That's the application is fees for. And then the credit check fee, because they go through somebody and they're passing on savings to you and things of that nature. I thought when I heard junk fees, I thought those were going away, which again, that would help if you're a renter or, They will look into the ridiculous cost of owning a home and removing fees from there. It's like, this is why I say I don't get, this is what I don't get about the Biden administration sometimes. I don't understand how, when you're going to do something, it sounds like a great idea, but somewhere in the execution, you go way left. That's what actually happened in this situation. They did go way left because you can sit there and say that this is great, but you're still not addressing the problem. Aside from the fact that why is rent so high? Why are mortgages still high? And yet banks who were bailed out multiple times are not bending over backwards to help the very same American people that bailed them out. When you got banks like Bank of America that are paying fees for identity theft and nobody goes to jail. But that's the point I'm making, that when it comes to the Biden administration, sometimes they have these wonderful bouts where they're going to do something, but somewhere in the execution, it just doesn't make any sense. It's good intentions, but it doesn't help the American people that's trying to keep a home over their heads, or at least trying to keep their money in their pocket, because let's be honest, rent is freaking sky high. You damn near have to have 2 jobs on the OnlyFans page just to keep afloat. And I wish I could make that up, but I wish I could say it's a joke, but for a lot of people, that's reality. But speaking of reality, guys, I don't really delve into this too much, but I thought this was interesting. You've probably seen this guy. Oliver Anthony on TikTok and on social media. He has a song called Rich Men North of Richmond. Very actually an interesting song because he does talk about, from the lyrics, again, it's on YouTube if you want to hear it, or TikTok. But his lyrics did strike a heart with a lot of people, from the fact of a blue collar worker that's just simply just trying to make ends meet, but at the same time, you're just not getting there. But those that are above him, the haves, just seem to be just getting by. And for a lot of conservatives, they thought he was talking about the quote unquote liberals, the elites. He was talking about them. Well, Mr. Anthony came out and said, I was talking about you. It's not a conservative anthem. It's literally the same guys who are basically, those of the conservative Fox News variety. He says the song was talking about them. And of course, how quickly they praised him on Fox News, how quickly they took him off. And again, I highly recommend to listen to the song. Again, I loved it. But it is amazing to me that how quickly those conservatives jump onto this and try to sit there and say, well, this is the conservative anthem. The guy turns around and says, no, it's not. It's like Eminem with Vivek. It was like Eminem with Vivek, who keeps on playing Lose Yourself. And Eminem had to sit there and say, bro, my song's not for you. But it is amazing to me that folks will try to sit on things that literally make no sense. And that was actually freaking one of them. But speaking of things that don't make any sense, and I say this with all certainty in the world, the Supreme Court of the United States, specifically one Amy Coney Barrett, has sat there and said, because we have talked about this in the podcast, about the Supreme Court and ethical issues surrounding some activities of some justices, like Clarence Taylor, just to name one, Mr. Uncle Tom himself. Miss Barrett has sat there and said that, yes, she welcomes public scrutiny of the Supreme Court. Really? Because it's easy to sit there and say you welcome public scrutiny, because it's the same public when asked, should the Supreme Court have an ethics review or someone they should answer to? A lot of people say yes. However, those justices like Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas will sit there and say that, no, we don't need to answer to anybody just because we are the highest court in the land, which is a dangerous attitude to have, because there should be checks and balances everywhere. The president has checks and balances. Congress has checks and balances. But if you really think about it, the Supreme Court does not have a balance. It really doesn't. Because they can rule in favor of something. Yes, it can be appealed by the lower ninth court, but 9 times out of 10 it stands up. The Supreme Court can shoot things back down. But when the Supreme Court does rule on something, that's usually the end of it all. So yes, imagine having an overly conservative Supreme Court that can literally dismantle lawmaking cases and make life hell for people. That's the reality we have now. Even more so, that these justices may or may not be influenced. Like I said, Clarence Thomas was schnoozing with rich billionaires that were conservatives. His wife, again, who really attempted to try to throw the election, also schmoozed with them. How could you not say there was a little bit of biased attitudes and possible tampering of a judge? But it's amazing that Barron's can sit there and say, well, we welcome public scrutiny, because as of right now, we as the public can't do anything about the judges, because all judges are nominated and confirmed by the Senate and by the Senate committee. I do wish, for the simple fact of the matter, that people would sit there and say, yes, we do need to vote an amendment that pretty much sits there and says the Supreme Court does have to have an ethical review board to which they need to answer to, and if found guilty, they can be removed. That's how it should be. But it's amazing. But she can sit there and say all the time, oh, we welcome the public. We want the public's opinion. You can't do anything about us, but we do welcome the public's opinion. So it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, yeah, we love that idea. You can't do anything about it because you're citizens, but we love it. So, it's one of those little empty things like, oh, well, it just makes you feel good for a second, but, I'll still be a judge later. But I digress. But the last story that we got before you to our Feel Good News segment, guys, I keep telling you, it is a hot labor summer. We have seen with UPS. We're seeing it with the hospital. We're seeing it with the hospitality workers in Los Angeles. We see it with teachers unions. We see it with nurses. We have seen strikes all throughout this year so far. And I keep saying there's one thing you should be worried about if you're an automaker, because I sat there and pointed this out, and I sat there and said, what if the United Auto Workers ever went on strike? One of the biggest unions in the United States ever went on strike. The big three automakers should be very worried. Well, time to get worried.
Big news in the automobile industry an hour ago. The United Auto Workers Union, the nation's largest auto union, voted to authorize a strike calling for improved wages and benefits.
Yeah, the UAW represents hundreds of thousands of workers at manufacturers like General Motors and Ford. This would be the union's first strike since 2019, when 49,000 GM workers walked off the job for 40 days. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch joins us now with the very latest. Hey, Jesse. So what kind of leverage does this vote give the union workers? And what did the president of the union say about the demands and this decision to authorize a strike?
Yeah, so to be clear, guys, for people watching at home, there is no strike at this point. What this was about was union members voting to say, yes, we support union leadership saying, let's go on strike if they feel it's necessary. We still have a couple weeks till these contracts run out in mid-September. The message from the president of the United Auto Workers, representing around 150,000 auto workers across the country, is simply put that the car makers are seeing a lot of money coming in, a lot of profits, and it's not winding up for a lot of things, among them a nearly 50% wage increase. They want pensions to be coming back, cost of living increases, and they want a shorter work week as well. So these are some of the demands in the list from UAW workers. And again, we're just a couple weeks away before these contracts expire, and we could be seeing a strike in mid-September.
But how does that affect just everyday people like you and me, Jesse? I mean, if we're talking 150,000 union members, that's who's part of this potential strike. What would a strike just of that size mean for the economy and frankly the auto industry at large?
Yeah, and there's always the chance that not all of these workers go on strike. The union could target a specific company, could target a specific plant. So it's not a guarantee that we're looking at 150,000 workers going on strike, even if a strike does wind up happening. Beyond those workers obviously missing out on pay and having to take a cut, and the companies potentially losing money as this all unfolds, the average American out there is not necessarily going to see an economic impact if this wraps up in the shorter term. But if you're looking to buy a new car and you're looking to buy one made by Stellantis, GM, or Ford, and one of those companies gets caught up in a strike, inventories are not high right now. If you've gone to buy a car, you already know you might have had trouble getting the car you want. So if inventories are choked off even more by the fact that there won't be new cars coming off of the line, that could very quickly mean that you're not going to be able to find the car that you want. So you might have to take what's in the dealership. You might look at another dealership. You might look for a used car. You might look at an entirely different brand that is not caught up in this strike. But it's not something that will necessarily lead to a higher cost for a new car, at least in the short term. So that should bring some relief.
That's
to
right.
consumers
There's some
out there.
Well, I don't know about bringing relief, just because the fact of the matter is, yeah, of course, as he said, it's not on strike right now. 2 weeks from now might be a whole different story. But again, when you have the UAW, like I said, one of the largest unions out there that are now threatening to strike, and it's always been the same. See, the crazy thing is, it's always been the same things. It has always been more pay, more benefits, and if you work in a factory, yeah, reduce work. Reduce work weeks. You should, but it amazes me that all these strikes can be simply solved by giving the people what they want. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to give them what they want. Look at UPS. UPS was threatening to stop all operations. One of arguably the largest logistical corporations in the world was about to have everything halted by the end of July. And what they do? Up the pay. Give these people air-conditioned trucks, benefits increase, more tuition for part-timers. They could have given all of them this at the beginning and avoided this whole mess. Do you not think for 1 second, if the UAW decides to strike, because again, car shortages are still around. I mean, yeah, car prices are still ridiculously high. I mean, a brand new semi-customized truck is anywhere between $70,000 to $90,000. Most SUVs are still in the high 50s. Most lower end sedans are still in the high 40s. Used car lots are no different. So yes, if we were to sit there and play the imagine game, what would happen if those workers were on strike? Car production would be halted. Prices on cars would go back up. Used cars would almost get new car prices, and it would be harder to get a car. So we can only imagine what's going to happen the next couple of weeks. Maybe they'll cave in. But I'm just saying the simple fact of the matter, guys, it's a lot easier to stay in a union because, as we've seen so far, unions have a pretty much undefeated streak these days. So almost every strike that ended wound up with its union people getting more, which is why I always sit there and say, join a union, never argue on your own, because there's strength in numbers. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, we're going to do our feel good segment, because usually how the Frack we got here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you use your faith in humanity, but hey, it's Wednesday. Tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday. We want to leave you guys out with some good vibrations. This story was about a guy to which it started out as an insult, and I do mean it did start out as an insult. A guy working for a fast food company for many years, and they decided for his multiple years of service to give him a movie ticket, a drinking cup, and other trinkets because they didn't give a shit about this man. I know this is supposed to be a feel-good segment, but work with me on this. That's how it started. How it ended, however, changed this man's life, and even now, he's still changing lives.
Movie ticket. Thank you very much.
Kevin Ford's moment of gratitude was one that changed his life forever.
I've worked here for 27 years. I've never missed not one day of work.
The fast food worker in Las Vegas, who said he had a perfect attendance record for 27 years, posted a video last May showing off a gift bag he received from his managers.
This is very nice.
The clip went viral, leading people to donate $170,000 to a GoFundMe set up by Kevin's daughter so he could buy a plane ticket to visit his family.
This is the first time you've seen them in years.
Their family reunited on the Today Show.
Hey, Javon. Seeing you guys in so long.
The incredible generosity of strangers blew Kevin and his family away.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. It's just a dream come true.
But it didn't end there. The donations kept coming and now total more than $389,000.
I feel like the whole world lifted me up, and it's still mind-blowing and still like a dream every day that I hope I never wake up from.
A dream which included that long-awaited vacation to see his daughters and grandkids in Texas.
When I finally got to hold them and see them, it was like everything to me.
Kevin's commitment to his job remains. He has not missed a shift since visiting Studio 1A.
I didn't go 27 years without missing a day for nothing.
He's also paying it forward.
When I'm in a store now, and there's people, especially single mothers or something, I tell them to ring up everybody and I pay for everybody's food.
And while all of the love and support has made Kevin feel like he's on top of the world, in September, he actually got to see it when he was gifted a trip to Mount Everest.
To be in the presence of such a great mountain, the highest peak, is beyond beautiful, it's beyond amazing. It's something that changes you and makes you, I feel, a better person.
One of Kevin's many life-changing experiences in 2022 that all started with a simple thank you.
Every day that I wake up, I'm excited. So I'm excited about spreading the love and showing people that that human spirit is still alive and well and that I'm proof of it.
For Today, Joe Fryer, NBC News.
I mean, if there was ever a brother that was, if you want to look up the definition of gratitude, it is him. And like I said before, it was a story that, a lot of people was like, that's insulting. How dare they? And then at the end of it all, the man is just helping other folks and just still practicing gratitude. You can't write a better story than that. You can't. I mean, the man is grateful and the man is winning in life. More power to him. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know it's live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before we get out of here, guys. Shout out to my buddy Vaughn at Big VZA Dot. You can definitely find him, Big VZA Dot on social media. If you need beats, it is the man to ask for. You can definitely check him out. And you can also check out his YouTube station that does have the beats there. And if you're interested in purchasing beats, just let him know at Big Vaughn, Big VZA Dot. Big Vaughn. Big Vaughn sounds like a used car salesman in Texas. But definitely check him out, Big VZA Dot, on all social media. After myself, guys, you can find me, BlackBox447 on all socials. I usually do reviews on everything that I watch, play, read, and sometimes gem stuff because I try to do a couple push-ups. Also, link at the bottom, guys. It's been scrolling right there. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you guys. If you copy and paste that into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack got here, get bit, and of course, off on this podcast. Definitely like, share, subscribe, let people know what's going on. And again, I want to know what you guys thought about everything we discussed tonight. I want to keep the conversation open, just keep it clean, keep it informative, because again, we may not all agree to disagree. We may not all agree or disagree, but we can't agree to disagree. That's all I'm asking for. At the same time, guys, it's been a while since I said this, but I guess I have to say it now. For the simple fact of the matter, Big Musty's back, as Tony Baker would say. Coronaviruses, as the cases are going back up. So there may be some areas where you might require a mask, or if you're traveling, you may require a mask. Guys, let's not be difficult. Nobody likes wearing a mask, but everybody wants to be alive. Everybody wants to remain safe. Everybody wants to keep each other safe. So if you're going into an area that does require a mask, please wear a mask. Don't be a dick about it. Just go with the rules, because the only way we're going to get these numbers back down is that we all work together, and that's simply how we're going to get there. That's all I'm asking for. Aside from that, guys, last thing I say about how the Frack got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information to allow you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a very informative perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better in society as we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our history by doing things the right way, like electing our first Black woman to be in the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to be the former Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman to basically be a national cybersecurity director, electing hopefully our next Black commander of the Air Force. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does anything go but our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through this. Peace.